And we're back for part 2 on Accentuate the Positive Media with Karen Swain with the fabulous Chris O'Connor. We had Chris on the show last week. Happy Easter, everybody. It's Easter Sunday in the States. It's Easter Monday here down under, in the land down under. Yeah, we had Chris on the show last week, and he's got such an extensive story. I was actually going to be away this weekend and upload a recorded show, a past show, and pop it on because, I know people are doing Easter, all the Easter stuff. But Chris and I had a few chats, and we didn't even touch the surface with his story. There's just so much to it. I said, do you want to come back and do part 2? And he said, are you busy Easter Sunday? And he said, no, I can do that. I can come back and do part 2. So that's what we're doing today. Stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello. Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive. With Karen Swain, you're listening to ATP Media, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio, touching around 120 countries, and we're streaming on 8 platforms today, including Rumble and Odyssey, Facebook, and the red one, YouTube, and Roku. We're streaming on Roku. Welcome back, Chris. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me back. I'm happy to be here.
Chris and I have already had a chat for the last 25 minutes or so about all sorts of things, which was blowing my mind and fascinating. So, yeah, we had Chris on the show last week, and I don't normally do back-to-back people. I think this is the first, actually, Chris, where I've done someone back-to-back, because I'm usually booked out 2, 3, 4 months, sometimes 6 months in advance for the show. But I was going to be away and put up a recording and have the week off. But I decided, I was really indecisive. Will I go away? Will I stay and do a second one with Chris? Will I go away? So I said, what are you doing Easter Sunday? And he said, I can do it. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. We'll do it. We'll do number 2. So here we are doing number 2. Yeah. And on Easter Sunday, hopefully, let me hear who's here in the comments. Susan. Hey, Susan. Thanks for having him back. She says, just finished Easter dinner. Happy Easter. Yeah, you too. Yeah, so in the States, I think it's like, 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, depending on your time zone. So people are busy doing... Alison's here. We've got some of the gang here with us. Good morning, AKA. From it's morning. And Lisha, happy Easter, darling one. Yeah, so we've got a few of the gals online, which is lovely because I love having the audience participating in these conversations.
Yeah.
So let's go over a little bit about what we talked about last time. We explored a couple of your NDEs as a child. And do you want to just do a short go over, or do you want me to do it, Chris?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I can't remember. What did we talk about? It was only a week ago. And we explored you having memories your whole life and of like something going on. And then how did you realize these memories were true? I can't remember. Did we explore that? Memories of another life, like this secret space program?
Well, at first, the first part of my life, first 25, 30 years, I didn't realize that they were true and real. I just remember I had them. And I was always told I had a vivid imagination. It even got as bad as saying that you must be a drug addict because you're making things up. And I'm like, well, no, I know none of that is true. So but I think that was intentional for me to build my own character, to stand strong on my own memories and beliefs.
Yeah.
It worked well for me ultimately, that I had those struggles at the beginning, but I always had certain memories and they've never faded. They've never changed. And they've been extremely consistent. And then only over time, other memories have come through that only added to them and helped make them have context, or then I could put a cohesive understanding to it versus just maybe flashes of a memory or short memories of things that made no sense whatsoever. And then over time, then those other memories come in and help support those core memories that I've had.
Yeah, it's interesting when you claim it as truth rather than dismiss it as imagination. It has a whole new context in your life. It expands. Like when I was first massaging, when I was in my 20s, I started getting a whole lot of psychic phenomena happening that no one had taught me about. I had no idea what was happening. And but funnily enough, I always was guided. I was always talking to what I called my common sense, not realize that I was talking to my mob, I call very reverently, or my spirit guides. I just thought I'm just chatting in my head to my common sense, and my common sense is answering back. So I used to call it. I would ask them, am I making all this stuff up? This crazy stuff I'm getting, am I making all this up? And they always said yes. And then they said, you have to remember you're making all of it up. You're making up that you've got someone on your massage table and that you're massaging them like you're the creator of your reality. And what you deem as your truth is your truth no matter what. There is no imaginary. There is only truth and truth and truth and truth, because thought creates. As it creates experience, whether it's in physical experience or in other dimensional experience or astral experience. Yeah, what we call as dreams. And just, we were given the conditioning that kids would say, I had a dream last night, Mum, that scared me. Oh, it's just a dream. It's not real. It's not real. Just dismiss it. It's not a reality. So we've been told that anything outside our paradigm is not real, but there are so many realities, right, Chris, there's so many realities, past life realities, future life realities, other dimensional realities. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and our brain doesn't really know the difference. It only knows truth and reality.
It does. It does.
We just have to figure out what is a physical experience we've had versus maybe one we're remembering from possibly someone else that we knew in the past. That's the only difference.
Susan's saying here, did you say something about having been in 4 different bodies? Yeah, he did. And Elsa's here. Morning, Karen. So glad to catch you live. Happy Easter, darling one. She's another galactic being. I've had Elsa on the show. Yes, the mob. So cute, right? That's amazing. She's in contact with like her and her kids. She's got a slew of kids. She lives up in northern New South Wales, and they're all in contact with off-world beings.
Wow.
Amazing story. But we'll go over. So we spoke about Chris having memories of being taken at 2 and having his body taken to basically you were away in another dimension, another time space for 60 years, like the 20 and back, they call it in the secret space point. But you did 3 of them, right?
Yes.
So this little 2-year-old body was put in some liquid and injected, like the Wolverine story, because I've heard you say that on another podcast.
Yes.
Where they injected the body, which this sounds to me like really sci-fi, but anything's possible, I suppose. And it was grown into a human form, like a human form, a male form, an adult form. And then that adult form spent 20 years. And do you want to take it from there? What happened after that? How did you do the next 20 and then the next 20? And so, were you in 4 different bodies?
Well, the very first, the body I was born with is the one that, like you just said, is the one that was age advanced. And I remained in that body for the first 20-year contract that I had with the U.S. military. And then I spent that 20 years in the service of the United States. And that was the deal, that I would give them 20 years of service, kind of outside of the system, not fully within the system. And I remember doing a few things, being underneath underground bases, DUMBs, deep underground military bases. I was also in the desert at some other base where I would walk the surface, in the desert, in this tiny, tiny little base where they were doing experimentations on young kids. And, that's not a positive thing, clearly. Although we were told, something very different if we were told anything at all. But so the first 20 years, was here on Earth for the most part. And then I was moved to, there's a moon, the very first moon outside the rings of Saturn, and that is called Mimas. It's Mimas, Mimas. It's also called Saturn 1. So it's the first moon. It's not as big as our moon. It's only like 123 miles, which I don't know how many kilometers that is. I forget, but wide, in diameter. So it's a small moon, and it's a natural moon, but it's been reworked. And in that reworking, most of that work was done in higher densities. And it was the people that own the station actually are in the 8th density. So they're quite high vibratory frequency entities. And in those frequencies, the 7th and 8th density, it's only love and positivity. It's only support. It's only service to others. So that's the point of that station, was to be a place where multiple other races could come in and have an embassy there and be able to work together here in our solar system because of the fact that the Earth, the human race, is evolving and will soon be working with other galactic races. And so for that to happen, they have to have a place to meet. And so that's what Mimas is. That's that space station. And Earth has an embassy there. It's an Earth embassy represented, as far as I recall, by all the major countries. Though there's not too many people there. I would say, many dozens, few hundred perhaps. It's a large station, so there's plenty of space for that sort of thing. But many other races also have an embassy there. And, Mimas has been kind of, I guess, mysterious for researchers. And the mystery of it, is that it has a wobble, is that there's these unusual thermal signatures that it has. Because in the 3rd density, all we see is a rocky moon. So we sent Cassini, the probe, and out to do, its research and send back information and photography and photographs. So we have photos, close-up photos of Mimas. And so it's a beautiful little rocky moon. It looks just like the Death Star on Star Wars, because there's this big, huge crater called the Herschel crater on it. And so it's a natural moon, but we're looking at it with our 3rd density eyes, where we can't see things very clearly, high vibrationally, especially. And so so it's a long story short. If we could fly there, and this is how we did it. For example, when I was first there, I went on a ship. I don't know how long exactly it took. I just keep remembering it's about 12 minutes, but I had some other experiences as well. But we went to Mimas. And then when you get there, because we're looking with our 3rd density eyes, we're seeing a rocky moon. But the spaceships, the United States space, force, actually have these engines, and I don't know what they're called technically. I recall that I always thought of them as being called a density engine, because what it does is it changes the density. So you turn on this density engine, and it creates this electrostatic field all the way around the ship. And then you can adjust that field to whatever density you want to visit. So suddenly, this rocky moon turns into a metallic space station, because now you're in whatever density you're adjusting it to, probably, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, I'm not sure exactly what one we would immediately go into. but then we would dock. We were able to dock with the ship then, or the station. The ship could dock with the station. And then as soon as we would dock with it, now you're in that frequency, so you can remain there. Now you can't remain a human, a third, fourth density human can't go into a density really above fifth, or even mostly in fifth. You can't really experience for very long because we can't handle that vibration of the photons in the cells. It's jangling, and we can't live in it. We can't even live in a fourth density, full fourth density quite yet. But so the Earth Embassy is in a section of the station that supports third and fourth density beings.
Atmosphere.
So we would be in like a section that's a third density section, and then there'd be other beings in those sections that could also live in the third density. So we could interact easily while we were there. We could go to the higher densities, some of them not at all.
It's interesting because what you're saying is actually what exists. Like, we are on Earth, like when you speak to psychics, and I'm one of them, but people that can see spirit with their outside eyes, with their physical eyes, they're here in our experience, all around us, sitting on the couch with us, like standing next to us. I had years ago, when I first embarked on energy healing courses in my early 30s, I met a friend who was one of these people that could see spirit through her outside eyes, her physical eyes. And when she would watch television, they'd walk in front of the television, it would blur the television. She's like, get out of the way. So they are existing in another dimension, which most people can't see, but with some people with expanded psychic abilities can. So when I say see, because I see spirit in my third eye, I don't see them I do see spirit as points of light. I don't see them as ghosts, some people see spirit as real, like they look like solid human form. And I have spoken to people on the show who have spoken to spirit guides that have manifested into physical form, and they've touched them and smelt them and heard them and seen them. So all their physical senses are engaged, and yet nobody else can perceive them in any way, shape, or form. So I always say to myself, how does that work? Like, how does that work? But I guess, like you're saying, if you understand how to dial up frequency, anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
Anything is possible. Hey, guys. Hey, Tyler. Yeah. So, wow, this is fascinating. Susan wanted you to talk more about your bodies, I think. So when you go to Mimas, get it right, Karen, and you dial up a different frequency, and now you're in this atmosphere, but it's still third density, what's happening to your physical form? Like, to interact with other beings and other densities, what happens to your physical form? Can you shift the vibration, your frequency of your physical form? How does that work?
Well, not necessarily. There's a number of ways that we would interact and communicate. Firstly, if they're able to be in the same density atmosphere, then it's fine. You're there with one another, and you can interact. Sometimes, if they're always higher densities. There's nobody lower than third, fourth. The higher densities can bring their vibration down. In the fourth density, you learn how to do this. We haven't learned that yet. It's coming for us. Then you can bring your frequency down a little bit and interact with the lower, like a third density being. And sometimes they would do that. Sometimes they would be projections that look very real, as if they're in the room, but they would project themselves. And sometimes it wasn't just for density reasons. It was sometimes there would be maybe my bodily smell would be offensive to some other race. Even if I thought I smelled great, to them it was not, right?
Yeah.
And then it may be the opposite, because sometimes I'd be sprayed down just to mask my scent. And sometimes we would have certain lighting that, because, I didn't look quite right in certain lighting, but then also there would be times when an individual would be like a solid hologram, where you could like practically, you could touch it and it felt solid, because there's some pretty high technology to create that. But then also sometimes it was just a projection that they were doing from their own mind. They were projecting an image of themselves and their consciousness into the boardroom we were in. So there's a number of ways. And usually if they're upper density, we just simply can't be in the same environment.
Yeah. Many years ago, Deepak Chopra was in Sydney doing conferences, and I took a girlfriend to go and see him who was just a little interested in this subject. And Deepak normally talks on a pretty mainstream level that the mainstream mind can understand. But this day, I've never heard him speak like he spoke. He was speaking to a conference room, in Sydney, Australia, and he was talking about how we are all holographic beings, like we're all holograms. And it just lost most of the audience. People just got up and walked out. And he was saying that the reality of Beam Me Up, Scotty, will soon be available, because, when you understand that everything is energy and frequency, and that we are, even the physical body is a holographic experience.
Yeah.
We'll understand teleportation in that way. And I was loving it. And my girlfriend, I remember looking at her, she looked at me with this look on her face like, what the hell have you brought me to? She just couldn't she couldn't cope with that. And but that was like 20, 30 years ago. That was such a long time ago. You don't hear Deepak talk about that so much anymore. I think he loses most people, but
if he would go back and maybe explain a little bit about what he's really talking about, is all things are photonic. Atoms are photons. I mean, they're made of photons and vibration and string and all this other stuff, right? So however solid you think you are, you can touch yourself, touch the desk, the computer.
Yeah.
It's not solid.
Yeah.
There's more open space within a solid material than there is solid, space. So on the level of a photon, we're all photonic, which you could also call a hologram.
Yeah. Yeah. Classically, he's known for saying the stuff of the universe is not stuff. There is no stuff. Because when you keep breaking it down, the particles of life, you actually don't find any physical particles. You just find energy.
End up with light, and that's the end of it.
It's energy. Yeah. All righty. So I don't know if we answered your question about all your bodies.
No, we didn't really. Okay, so the first body was the one that was age advanced. Then I went to Mimas, and I spent about 20 years serving on Mimas. So the first body, once I got to Mimas, well, the first 20 years was on Earth, like I said. And then right after I got to Mimas, I feel like it was within a year. It was not very long. I was in negotiations with a race that went bad, and I was killed.
Oh, okay.
And because of nature of our jobs, we all had a physical copy of our bodies in case we were killed or we died or something happened, so that our consciousness and our soul, all of that, could be switched over to the copy. And it had to be an exact copy, because it's a DNA signature match. It's a pineal gland frequency match. It required to be an exact copy. So I was killed in this particular negotiation. And then I lived out another 20 years, my second 20 years. And when I went to renew my contract, I requested a new body, because I was in my mid 40s technically, because the body, when I was killed, the body I was moved into was 25, 30, fairly young. But then I added another 20 to it. So I just, out of vanity, just said, well, I'll re-sign up if, I could do this, and this. One of the things was, move me into a 20-year-old body for my last 20 years. And they did.
Please.
total vanity,
No, I get it.
I comment. I would almost do that now again, actually, if I had a chance.
Darling, you look great for an old dude.
Yeah, I guess. But then
but I get it. I
at
get
the
it.
end of that 20-year period, which is now 60 years, I was in the service for 60 years at this point. When I left, I can speak for myself. When I left, then what they did was they had a 2-year-old copy. And then they moved my consciousness. Actually, the first thing they did was wipe my memory of the previous 60 years.
They tried to wipe your memory.
Say again?
Yeah. They tried to wipe your memory.
Oh, I kept arguing with them. I'm like, oh, I'm going to remember. No, you're not. I'm going to remember, okay, well, we're going to double dose you, But anyway, so they erased my memory and put me as a blank slate into a 2-year-old body. And then they moved me from that timeline back to this timeline we're on now, where you're listening to me and I'm speaking, and returned me back to 1970. And then I've lived out from that point on. So this is the 2-year-old at the end of my contract body. So it's technically since I was born initially in 1968, and then was on a separate timeline, lived 3 bodies there, and this is the 4th.
Yeah, and as we discussed last week on the show, none of us are in our original bodies, because every 2 years, every cell in our body is a different cell. Yeah. Every cell, every single cell. So the concept of having new bodies is actually a normal concept. I mean, think about it. Think about what your body looked like at 2 and what your body looks like at 50 or 60. It's not, or even 20 or 50. It is not the same body. We are not wearing the same body. So the consciousness is constantly adjusting to a renewed body. Yeah, how all that works. I think these are questions that I have to, reemerge to infinite intelligence to really understand how all that works. One of the reasons I started thinking about God, I grew up pretty agnostic, not completely atheist, but my parents weren't into any sort of religion or spirituality. And then I started studying as a naturopath. And when I studied the anatomy and physiology of the body, I kept thinking, God, who designed this? Who designed this? Like, what intelligence designed this incredible apparatus that we call our physical bodies? Like, wow. And that started me thinking differently. Like, what intelligence is that? And how can I contact that intelligence? There's some intelligence that's designed this. Yeah. We call it, as humans, we call it God. But probably it was some ET out there that designed the human form.
Might be a real good chance that's the truth.
Yeah. The mantids. They're saying cooperation. There was what's the word? A conglomerate, a consortium of different intelligences that designed the human form. Yeah, trial and error. They're just telling me. But we wouldn't be wrong by calling it God, because we're all God, right? So to say God designed the earth and the body, or to say a consortium of ET intelligence design, it's still all God, because we're all an extension of the source. So it wouldn't be wrong. Let me ask you this. When you were having those experiences on off-world, you were running through time. I know that you came back into 1970, but time was still simultaneously playing out on Earth. So you're like another you was out there having those experiences as you're now living right now. Did you have any access to this life in your memory or thoughts, or not at all?
I remember making contact a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember one particular event where I went through this, in a dream. I went through this doorway that's kind of like floating in space sort of thing. And then there's this lawn, like the putting green on a golf course, just floating in space, and there's stars everywhere. And there I am standing in the middle of it. So I go over there and I talk to myself.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what we talked about.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not supposed to know, but But yeah, so there was a couple times I remember that interacting with, but I got the distinct feeling he was breaking the rules by doing that.
He
Which is
being you and
exactly something I would do. Yeah.
he being you in your human form, in your
Yeah.
in your earth experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling my friend yesterday, I was telling Chris that I went down to see a friend, and her sister was my best friend who died at 36. She killed herself. And after she died, she was one of the many people that had died during my life, because I don't know, call me the angel of death. Lots of people die around me, but they give me the experience that there is no death. Mum was the first one to die when I was 16. She kept coming to me saying, there's no death. There's no death. I'm just in another place. And Kate would do that too. And I had memory, and I can't do this today, which is increasingly frustrating, of when I would fall asleep at night. I had memory of waking up in my astral form, and she'd be sitting on the bed waiting for me, and in her astral form, in another form, and we'd go off and do stuff. But I remember waking up and seeing her sitting on the bed and going, hi, and having a conversation. And then we'd go off, and I have no memory of after we'd move away from wherever, from my bedroom, like we were in my physical bedroom, which was my astral bedroom, I don't know. And I have no memory of that. But I guess we can all access that by having some sort of hypnosis. Yeah. Have you ever had hypnosis to access your memories more?
I did once. I did. It was helpful, but really the most advancement I have made is through meditation and through pulling it in on my own, pulling those memories in.
That's interesting. What's Alison say here? Was taught that our first 8 cells remain. Yeah, I can't confirm or not confirm that. I think the energy signature remains, which is creating the cells. I remember correctly you mentioned having a Kundalini awakening. Could you talk about how it changed your life and how long until you felt integrated? Great question. Thanks, Susan. You can do all the work for me. You can do all the work for me today. Yeah.
I did have, I didn't know what it was at the time. I literally thought I was going insane. I really was trying to be reasonable about my insanity, but apparently there was no such a thing as reasonable insanity, because there was no insanity. But I would, as an example, I would be lying in my bed, and I lived in Southern California at the time, and I really thought there was an earthquake, just small little tremors. But then it happened 2-3 times a day. And then it happened for a few weeks at a time. And I thought, this is just not usual. Why am I so sensitive to these tremors? Because there are many tremors throughout the day. We just don't feel them.
Yeah.
But then they got worse. And then I would be looking at people either live or maybe on television or on a computer. And certain people, their whole face would swirl, just become like a vortex. So their face would disappear down to a point. And then that really, made me think I was losing it. So I had all these tests on my brain. And I went all the way through a university, and they said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. I'm like, well, okay. But then what are these answers? And then I felt all this energy flowing through my body that I'd never felt before. And I didn't have anybody to tell me what any of this was. This is over 20 years ago. And that's another reason I speak out now to people, because there's a lot of people have these odd, strange experiences that they don't know what it is. And so I would just have these experiences of energy flowing through my body in a way that my brain, especially at night, or if I'm just waking up, and this still happens from time to time, but I kind of call it a brain orgasm, because it's just vibrating, just literally vibrating. And I, later learned that these are all Kundalini openings of the chakra system, of the energy body, and that we begin with these energy flows, and that's just a side effect, a physical side effect to an energy process of evolution. So the individual's evolving energetically, and the body is just translating that in the best way it can.
Yeah.
And that was my experience with Kundalini.
Yeah. Amazing. I want to talk about the healing tech that you experienced on Mimas as well, because I'm sure there was, I'm sure. But I want to share a story with you. Like, one of the most amazing experiences I had of seeing the world as the energetic matrix that it is was when I was out of body at night, and I came back and I did have memory. This is what frustrates me. I have some memory of being out of body, and every night when I go to bed, I ask, can I remember? And most of the time I don't. So it frustrates me. But anyway, I had memory of this night, and I'm in another dimension. It's a lot longer story, which I won't go into, but I'm with a group of people and we're seated at a table talking about things, and I felt like I was in an earthquake. And I looked around the table and I grabbed the table and I said, what's happening? And then the next minute, bang, I'm back in my bedroom. I'm not in my physical body. I'm not out of my body, but I'm simultaneously in and out. But I'm sort of up in the ceiling, and I'm looking out, and everything is see-through. Everything is translucent and transparent and vibrating. So I'm seeing the physical world in its holographic nature. And what I notice is that 2 rooms over, I'm looking at my daughter waking up and coming down the hallway to wake me up. And I'm realizing that my body or my consciousness or something, intelligence, has called me back to my body because I'm about to be physically woken up. And I remember gasping at the intelligence, the orchestration of it. How did this, here I am having this lovely time out of body at night. My daughter's about to come and wake me up. But that earthquake, that sort of vibration experience was the first thing I noticed. And I didn't know what was happening to me. And I asked people, what's happening to me? And then bang. And I also was chatting to the guides and the mob saying, I didn't feel like I traveled anywhere. Like, I didn't have any motion of traveling from one place to another, like places. There was just 1 minute there, the next minute here, after I felt the vibration. And they said, yeah, in truth, there is no space or time. These are constructs of a reality that you're experiencing. There is just focus of thought. Where your focus is where your experience is. And I'm like, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And then I think part of those, the tremor feeling is a way for us to be able to acknowledge that there's something happening, but also keep us grounded in our body, in our physical, because we feel the physical effect from it.
What's Susan saying here? I'm hearing myself back. Oh, yeah, I woke up thinking we were having an earthquake. Still sometimes vibrates like that much in 8 years. Like that much in 8 years. Yeah, so you experienced that too. What else is saying here? The Quakers Shakers prophecy. What are you saying? They knew we were coming in now. Quakers Shakers prophecy. So I want to ask you, when you're on Mimas, was this the only place in that 40 years off-world that you experienced or that you have memory of experiencing, or were there other places that you went to?
I know there were some other places. I do have some memories of at one point in time, and I don't know the context to this. I just have the memories of it. I was actually captured by a fairly nefarious race, and psychologically tortured. And I know that wasn't on Mimas. I certainly can't imagine it was, because the things that were happening would have been known, and it wouldn't have been allowed. So I have memories of being on some other ships, but a lot of the time during that 40-year period, I don't know how much of the time, but because of the fact that there's a number of us of what you would call psychics or telepaths or telekinetic abilities. But there are other races and many other races that speak only through telepathy and only do mind to speak and only connect in that way. And so we weren't, necessarily nearly as good as these other races at extracting information from, somebody who's weaker than you at, the psychic arts.
Yeah.
So because of that, I would either have to remain in a space that was highly insulated with certain types of metals to keep out any psychic interventions, anybody coming in and trying to steal information, or I would be put in stasis. And I was in stasis, I'm going to guess more than half the time, up to maybe 60-70% of the time, just because it was security risk for me to be awake and walking around. So a lot of my time, in fact, there's another gentleman, he's from France. His name is Jean-Charles Moyen. And he and his wife, who they work together. I don't remember her. I remember him, but there were times where they were guarding me while I was in stasis, and so I didn't have that memory at all until the two of them shared that with me, and I'm like, I'd forgotten all about that. But
so I've had Jean-Charles on the show. Fascinating story. He has a story of having a physical teleportation experience in his physical body. Where he was a teenager and he was thinking about his girlfriend passionately, and he found himself in his pajamas standing outside her front door. And he knocks on the door, and the father answers like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he's like, "I don't know."
Just show up.
Just showed up. Fascinating. Yes, Deepak said, one day in the not too distant future, teleportation will be a reality here on Earth. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, but who knows? But talking about advanced human tech, because the reason we have these conversations that sound totally out there is that there is technology that we could have on Earth right now, healing technology, free energy technology. There is technology that is starting to come out into the collective, the mainstream collective, that is available to us and has been available on Earth for years, maybe even 100 years, but has been suppressed. What sort of technology did you see when you were on Mimas? Like, if somebody was injured in some way or hurt or got sick, what did they do?
Well,
the physical form.
Of course, firstly, there's the consciousness transference. There's that. Now, I always felt that was remarkable. But they also had, we call them medical beds, here on Earth, because we don't know what else to call them. But they had technology where they had, like, what do you call, like a kind of a photocopy. They can lay on a hologram. So if you're laying in the bed, they can lay on a hologram of you, interlay it with your body.
Yes.
Okay? So, but what happens is your physical form and the cells within your body will try and replicate what that hologram looks like. So say if you've had an injury, say if you end up with cancer or something, okay? Your cancerous physical form is lying there, then they put this projection of a hologram of you, your body in its perfect health.
Yes.
And then they stimulate it somehow. And I know there's these different frequencies and types of energies that they use to stimulate cellular growth. And then your physical form matches that hologram.
Yeah.
So you become healed quite quickly, maybe in minutes or hours at the most. So I remember that. I remember some of the other technology just in traveling. I remember seeing these giant, look like quartz crystal pyramids, and there's these different like stainless steel spheres embedded within them, and then there's mercury, and then they spin, and there's all this all this stuff. And they have tachyon energy. That tachyon energy, they would shoot into certain crystals as well, and that created an energy that they could harness, and they would run, some ships would run on that. They had cryogenic technologies, but mostly those technologies that I remember were for keeping the soul. Because sometimes if somebody was killed, for example, and they had to extract, you have like 2 hours after a body dies to extract the consciousness and soul and the memories. You can extract that. But if for some reason they can't get you in a new body right away, they'll put you in, the easiest way to describe it is a cryogenic chamber, a small little chamber. And it's not, I don't recall it being extremely cold, because what it was it's a frequency and vibrational chamber. And what that does is it puts a pocket around the consciousness, and then doesn't allow that consciousness to go back home, wherever that home is for you. But they can only do that for a week to 2 weeks. And then it has to go, then they can't contain it for much longer than that. So there's a lot of really remarkable technology. There was technology for time travel, and they learned that it's really easy to time travel if you know how to do it. You have to have a ship that can go 99.9% the speed of light. You have to have coordinates. You have to have all the math ability to do the math. So say if we are here on Earth and we want to go to Saturn, we have a trajectory. So our ship is on that trajectory. Of course, if you go on the speed of light, you're going to be there in just a minute, or any further place. So if you want to go along that trajectory, and you choose your trajectory based on where you want to end up in time, physically where you want to end up, and there's this trajectory, then you exit like you're exiting a highway or freeway, right? So you exit that trajectory going that speed of light, and the formulation is you at a certain angle at a certain speed, and then you stop. Then because you've surpassed almost all the light that's traveled, you're back in time. And that's how they brought me back. The trajectory was wherever their starting point is. And then they wanted me to end up in Glendale, California in 1970. They had a trajectory to Glendale. And then they knew by formulation when to exit and what angle to exit that trajectory. And that brought me back. And that's how they do it.
Wow, amazing. I know what we perceive as magic or miracles is actually just physics, isn't it? It's just physics.
It's all based on it.
It's all science. Yeah. And we're just starting.
That's why at a certain point, spirituality and science merge. They can't help but merge.
They can't help but merge. Absolutely.
Because they're the same thing ultimately. So it's like, y'all stop arguing, because I grew up with, science is bad, it's evil. And, no.
Oh, because you grew up in the religious, the very religious and really and the sort of fundamental religious environment that you grew up in, they said science was evil. Really?
Ultimately. I mean, that was 40, 50 years ago now.
Yeah, I know, but I had the opposite. Like my parents, my father figured himself as an intellect, and my brother was the same. And they think that they don't call religion evil, but they see anyone that believes in religion or spirituality as like not intelligence, as like like back then. It's not now so much. Maybe people still, but like you're not educated, basically. If you believe it, you're not what? Sorry.
You're not thinking for yourself.
You're not thinking, yeah. And I found that really interesting. When Mum was dying when I was 16, we had no religious upbringing. And I walked into her hospital room and she had a priest reading out of the Bible. And I was so confused. I'm like, what? And then he leaves, like, nice to meet you. No, he leaves the hospital room. I said to Mum, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm dying. I'm dying. And I go, I know. But, we've never had any of this religious stuff in our whole, it's like right at the end of her life, she decides she now needs to have a priest come and read the Bible. It's like a little late, Mum. But yeah, it's interesting, these paradigms, these silly ideas that we have on Earth. I need to do a station ID break. You're listening to Karen Swain on Accentuate the Positive Media, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness, and we are on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio, all over the place, having a lovely time with the wonderful. Please remember, if you're listening to on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, or any of the audio platforms, to subscribe and give us a like and a comment. We're listening to the wonderful Chris O'Connor, part 2 of ET Technology and Consciousness. We're flying all over the cosmos today with his amazing memories and stories of other lives. I call them other lives because they really are other lives, right? Even though
I see them as other lives, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
we
just
were
remember
on.
them. I don't really integrate them too much. They're just a memory.
They're a memory. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I remember my girlfriend, the one I was talking about, that who died when she was in her 30s. She had been traveling through Europe with her husband. They'd been to all sorts of places. And I remember when she came back, I was quizzing her. What did you do? Where did you go? Tell me all about it. And so she's recalling memory. And she said something really interesting to me. She said, God, it all seems like a dream now. And I sort of scratched my head and I thought, what? Like, you've just come back from overseas. What do you mean it seems like a dream? But to recall the memories of the experience that she'd had, like just recently, she was saying, it all seems like a dream now. And I thought that was a really interesting comment, right? Because it was her physical life experience, but it felt like a dream. Yeah. So dreams are real. Okay, so back to the story. We're on Mimas and we're talking technology. What else are they doing? So Mimas is in another dimension, not from our third density perceptual experience. It is a space station, a conglomerate of different galactic beings from all over the cosmos. What is that movie? I'm trying to think of that movie that starts off like that, the space station and all these different, and they ground control to Major Tom. They've got that song playing and they're coming out of their spaceships, shaking hands, and they're humans, and then they become more and more robotic, and then sort of reptilian looking beings. And what is that movie? Somebody help me out. I've watched it again recently. Anyway, it's a great beginning to a movie. So this is what Mimas is. There's beings from hello. Tell me the name of the movie. You're saying hello, but it's still on Mimas from all over the cosmos, and some of them are existing in different densities. So even though they're in the same physical location, they're not perceivable because they're in different densities, which was depicted in that movie. That was depicted in that movie after the book. Oh, my memory is failing me today. There was a book that came out years ago. Was it Dan Brown? And gosh, I can't remember it. But there was a part in the movie. The book was made into a movie where they were being chased by soldiers in the desert, in the jungle. And they come to this sort of stone circle, and the people that are being chased all meditate around the stone circle, and they shift their frequency. And as the soldiers come out of the jungle into the stone circle, they can't see them because they shift their vibration, and now they're in a different density. So they're not physically perceivable to the soldiers' eyes. Do you remember that movie that I'm talking about?
I don't know that I've ever seen that. Yeah. Sounds interesting. It was a book that was written years and years ago. And I remember my intellectual friend said that it was the worst written book they'd ever read. Spelling and grammar was really bad, but the story was fascinating. As someone who was a dyslexic, I didn't actually notice that the spelling and grammar was bad. I just enjoyed the story. So what else? Oh, I think I've lost you. You've frozen. There you go. You're back. There you are.
You froze for a sec. What else happens on Mimas?
Well, Mimas is a place, like you say, for literally hundreds of different races to come together. You know, it's it's a place to negotiate contracts. It's a place to meet. It's a place to come to understandings, to do trade, to, most of the time your trade is information or crystals or some sort of mineral. And so they do trade with that as well. They trade information, and it's a place that is meant to house certain councils. There is information, and they call it maybe a federation. I remember this particular Mimas being called the Confederation of Planets.
Okay.
Meaning there's just a large group of planets throughout the galaxy that have representation there. Now, why would this happen? What is the true ultimate purpose, and why are they here in our solar system? Well, I'll answer my own question.
Good.
There's a number. There's more than one. Groups, that are interacting with Earth right now. Now, Earth is in this frequency, vibrational, and evolutionary uptick. We're evolving. Humans are evolving. And when we get to the place where we have intelligent life on a planet, and that intelligent life is, getting to the place where soon they're going to be able to leave their own planet, then they're contacted at some point in that process, in the upper process, that we refer to it as the third density.
Mm-hmm.
So when this third density race is beginning to move into the fourth density, then before they can do that, there's a number of things that happens. Sometimes, and it's certainly happened on Earth, there are more nefarious service to self groups that come in, because if they can conquer the whole race, then they harvest the energy of the whole planet and the whole race. So they want to come in and conquer. But there are many, many more than there are negative, if you want to call them negative. There are many more benevolent forces. You can call them angels. You can call them spirit guides. There's a number of things that these beings are, and they come in to help protect that race. In this case, now it doesn't always happen that way on a planet. Some planets, all the beings are, service to others, positively oriented. So there's no need for that interaction unless a race it's service to self and wants to conquer them comes in. Then they have to send in others for protection. And in part of that process is there's a spiritual journey that the race has to go through, and the individual. And that spiritual journey is what we call enlightenment. And for us to become enlightened, it's not just a concept. It truly is a frequency change in the brain. And then once those things change, then we begin to have the ability to see other densities. We can interact with other races, other entities, and they come in, and then they come in to help teach us. And that's the process. So, and they did come in, to help, maybe teach Earth humans, a few thousand years ago, and it didn't go well. Because we're beings to worship, and we desire to worship. So we made them gods. And because we made them gods, we misunderstood all the information and all the teachings that they were trying to share. So they had to leave. This is what Mimas does. This is what these confederations of planets do. For a race to come in right now, because our planet's locked down, basically, nobody can necessarily come in without permission, and that permission is given by the Confederation or the Federation of Planets. They all have to agree. So if somebody wants to come to Earth now, they have to go before the councils and then present what it is they want to do and how they want to try to be of assistance to humanity. If they're here, if they're wanting to come here for service to self issues and to conquer or whatever, they're not going to go to the council and ask permission, because they'll never get it. But basically, that's the purpose of any confederation or federation of planets is to help keep a protection and control from outside forces interacting and interfering and attempting to conquer lower races who are just evolving.
Yeah, I have heard that from quite a few different people. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm thinking, like, as you say, a few thousand years ago, they were attempting to help us back then. But in the greater scheme of things, like a couple of thousand years is really nothing when you're looking at the evolution of a planet, right?
Right.
So, but even though they attempted it and failed dismally, like this is crunch time right now. This is like we need to evolve now because our technology, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, they're just reminding me of Atlantis, like we've done that before. Yeah, it's just that end of a cycle. We've done that before. What do you see happening, Chris, as somebody that has these memories? And you also said that you attempted to create a healing center and a medbed, creating that medbed environment, but finance has got the better of you, and now you've got the DEEMS, the apparatus that you sell, the healing apparatus. How do you see the Earth evolving with this sort of technology in the not too distant future?
I have nothing but confidence. I used to say hope, but I don't need hope when I have such a confidence that the Earth is going to be a much different place. People want to know when, and they want it to be in the next 2-3 years. It's not going to be that soon. Not unless every single human gets on the same page and is of the same mind, then it would all be over at that point. But we're not there yet. We can't get along with politics or religion, let alone the grander galactic understandings. So it's our job, you and me, it's our job to come to a place where we're ready. But having said that, I pretty much tell people now by the year 2100, this is going to be an extremely different planet. It's going to be much more of service to self souls incarnating on the planet. I grew up, like you said, a fundamentalist Christian, and we believed in the new Earth. I didn't used to think that was real, but now I understand what that is. And that is a fourth density Earth, where it's been renewed through all positively oriented service to self souls. All the other souls have gone on somewhere else. They may go to another planet if they need to continue their third density experience, or if they can move on to fourth or fifth density as a negative soul or a service to self soul, then they'll go to another place where that's more appropriate. Then everybody else will be left here on Earth, and all of those changes will manifest. Right now we can't imagine, there not being a police force. We can't imagine there not being some military for protection, but we won't need it soon because nobody's going to come for us. Nobody would even think about doing that. Nobody would ever attack you. Nobody would ever steal from you. So there's no need for any of that. Then we'll all be on the same page at that point. Now it's going to take a little while to get there. But the Earth, I traveled at one point in time, and I don't understand the full context, but the context of being the Earth will be I kind of lost my train of thought. I apologize.
That's okay. I do it all the time, darling one. I do it all the time. But I'm going to get back to your story. Susan says here, thank you for talking about Earth beings locked down. The only galactic beings I've felt in meditative states have been very high vibration. They feel like pure love. Yeah, me too.
Yes.
Me too. Do you see Earth existing as more than one vibrationally? Do you mean like the splitting of Earth theory? Oh, yeah. Yeah, the splitting of Earth theory.
I've heard that, and I do have this memory of there being two Earths, basically, but they're not in the same frequency. and
Yeah.
one you could say is more service to self, one is more service to others.
Yeah.
Details.
Garnet that I was talking about that was on the show. I was talking about him to you before we went live. Chris was asking me, why do I have a capital A in my name? And I said, you know what? Because my name is pronounced Karen, not Karen. And I put the capital A, the typo, literally in my name so that people ask me that question. And Garnet Schulhauser was back on the show this year. I've had him on the show over the last decade 8 times. And he had waited until this year to ask me that question. Why do you have a capital A in your name? It had taken him 10 years to ask me that question, but bless his heart. So Garnet is somebody whose spirit guide takes him in his astral form and shows him incredible things across the cosmos. When he first contacted me about 10 years ago, it blew my mind what he had to share. And he's put it down in 5 books. But one of the ones where he went to what we have called New Earth. He went to that experience of what Earth is like in a different vibration where there is no police. And the government, is more of a collective understanding rather than the types of government we have now, God forbid. And he also had an experience in spirit of talking to somebody who was in spirit, and she had gone through tragedy where her family was killed in a car accident and they had all died. And she was absolutely devastated. And somebody, a friend of hers, had said to help her alleviate her grief, why don't you learn to meditate? And so she did. And she became very involved in sort of an Indian way of meditation and an ashram. And she meditated for a long time. And she shifted her reality, her physical reality. And she let go of all the hatred and all the anger and all the upset. And she moved her reality so far that during a meditation, she woke up out of her meditation and found herself on New Earth. So she had literally ascended from this 3rd dimensional density into that different planet, which is in a different frequency, which is Earth in a different frequency.
Right.
And then she lived out the rest of her life on the physical planet of New Earth, and then died. And then Garnet spoke to her as a spirit, as a soul. And I had a million questions that he couldn't answer. So what happened to her physical body when she ascended? Like, did it disappear? Did she leave her physical body and go into another body? And so she looked dead on this, and he didn't have the answers. So he said, I didn't ask her those questions. But what he did ask her was, she was looking to reincarnate back onto Earth. And he said, will you reincarnate back onto New Earth because it's so much beautiful and there? And she said, no, all the trauma that I went through, I learned so much by going through that, and I learned how to heal. And so I'm going to reincarnate back onto 3rd density Earth because I want to help people heal as I healed. And made me cry. Yeah.
It's a service to others, soul.
Right. Yeah. Which I thought was so cool because she had the opportunity of incarnating anywhere, but she was like, no, get me back down there to that place where people are in pain and suffering. And that's where the work is needed, right? I think all you light workers that are online listening to all this, you can understand that that's what you're all doing here. Mm. Yeah. So it exists. It's out there. That newer. As far as the splitting of the Earth, Susan, that you asked about, are we becoming more of a vibrational match to that new Earth, and then eventually we just merge with that new Earth? I don't know. Maybe that's how it works. What do you think, Chris?
Well, I think that, the photonic rate of the sun having changed, which is higher frequency, higher vibration, is actually the process of the Earth itself changing, into a more cohesive environment for full 4th density human soul and physical body. So we're in process now.
Yeah. How long do you think it's going to take? I know you haven't got the answers.
I know. It's like,
as long as it takes.
It's really up to us. It's up to us and our consciousness and what we allow to happen on Earth. We really are in control. We just are told we're not. We got to regain that control, and then we can make this happen more quickly. But we just have to go through that process, and however long that process takes. I do know that I was told a few years ago that the Earth will be completely different and pretty much a full 4th density, because we don't just switch into full fourth density. It's a process, and that we're all in. And this body, this body has to die. And if I decide to come back to Earth, then it's going to be in a full fourth density form, so it's just that process of people dying off, some going away and not coming back, and others remaining, but in a higher density form.
Yeah.
And so it's just however long that process takes. Now, two things could happen. One, it remains natural and the population just switches over. And the other is there's a cataclysmic event where it all happens very quickly. Now, it's up to us as humans what direction that happens, if it's going to be. But we have a lot of protection.
Yeah.
There are entities, there are beings that don't want us to go through the trauma, of a cataclysm. It isn't necessary if we can do it on our own.
Yeah.
And that's why so many of us are opening up and talking nowadays, trying to say, no, listen, just try to think, try to open up the understanding so we don't go through that trauma. But we're highly protected. I'll give you an example, because I don't like to frighten people at all. It's not what I'm about. But we all know the events of World War II, where the United States dropped some bombs on Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We know that story. Well, there are a couple of things that are important to know about that. One of those things is that there wasn't a single lost soul, and in that whole scenario. Now, the soul itself doesn't dissipate unless it's within a tremendous energetic explosion, energy like a nuclear weapon. Then there's a risk of the soul itself breaking apart vibrationally, and that's a loss for God. That's a loss for source. So we have these benevolent forces that are part of these confederations and federations that wouldn't allow that to happen. Now, you might ask, why wouldn't they stop the nuclear bomb? Well, because it was a human choice and a human invention and a human action. So they can't interfere with the human action. Now if another race came in and dropped a bomb, they'd swoop in and they'd stop it. And then they'd try to encourage us not to do it too, of course. But in that circumstance, in Japan, when those bombs were dropped, they couldn't stop the bomb. They weren't allowed to. But they could collect every single soul, because they're outside of time. Just as that bomb exploded, the bomb had to explode. So there was confirmation that this is going to happen. But all of these, you might have, if we could see them, we'd probably call them angels, came in and collected every single soul so that there was no risk of anybody being lost. That's the protection that we have here on this planet. And that gives me so much hope.
I've actually seen that firsthand.
Really?
When I say firsthand. So, and it's so interesting. I watched Tucker Carlson speak to a 9/11 whistleblower. He was sorry, my memory is just not working for names today. It must be the Easter energy. But it's one of his latest interviews with a guy who was in politics, and he was a high-ranking politician. And he was disclosing stuff that happened during 9/11. So when 9/11 happened, and many people say that was actually some bombs as well, not just planes hitting buildings, but bombs going off and so on and so forth. I said to myself, God, how can I help? And I just projected my consciousness over there to have a look. And that's exactly what I saw. I saw all these, you could call them angels, spirits, helping people who were 1 minute in their body, the next minute out of their body. They didn't actually know they were dead, helping them. Like a lot of them were dressed as firemen. And they were saying, come with me, I'll take you to safety, I'll take you to safety. So they were talking to what we would call souls or spirits of people that are sitting at their desk typing, and the next minute they're out of their body and they don't actually even know what's happened. And so all these angels came, and they were all ready. And what I was shown, I was just watching it, because I said, how can I help? but there was nothing for me to do. Like, I just was watching the scene unfold. They said many of the firemen that were killed during 9/11 had that contract, that spiritual agreement, to come into physical form and then to leave their body during that time to be of assistance to these people that were all dying, to help, take them to the next experience, the next dimension, to wherever they needed to go, and to help them acclimate and help their consciousness understand that you're actually not in your physical form anymore, you've died, and to help them, because it was such sudden death. So I would assume that that's what you're talking about during the bombing of, that when you die so suddenly like that, there's help for you.
Yeah, I mean, it happened even in, I think it's Joplin, Missouri, a few years ago during these tornadoes that were just going through and devastating the whole area. And all these kids kept telling their parents, "Do you see the butterfly people?" And so all these people that came in with wings, these kids were calling them the butterfly. You can look them up on the internet. It's an actual thing. The butterfly people that were there calming the kids down, telling them it's okay, you're going to be okay. So there's so much beautiful help for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So much help. I want to go back to what we were talking about, transitioning to the new earth. I was chatting to the mob about that before. And because I always ask the hard questions, like, how does that work? And they were explaining to me that, like, as we've stated on this show and on other shows, when you talk about being in different bodies, and we've spoken about, like, every 2 years we're in a new body. So we're completely wearing a brand new physical form, but the transition was so smooth that you don't notice it. Like, you don't notice that. So I'm wearing a different body than I was a couple of years ago, but I don't notice that. Like, there wasn't, you just don't notice. And I remember when I was pregnant. No, I had the baby. I had the baby when Annika was little. And I was thinking about her growing, her physical form growing, because babies grow really quickly. And I started thinking about how every cell in the body knows exactly what to do in perfect timing. It's like one finger doesn't grow before the other finger, or one arm doesn't get longer before the other one, or, like, it all just, it's perfectly orchestrated. And everything, there is this divine intelligence that just knows what to do. Yeah. And so that divine intelligence is the same when we're talking on a cellular structure or as we're talking on a cosmic structure. Like, as we're ascending the new earth, it's this, unless, as you say, there is some cataclysm that speeds up the process, which is definitely possible, and lots of people are talking about it, there is this seemingly smooth transition into a completely new experience, a new physical experience, just like our bodies are doing in every second, every moment. Yeah.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah.
Well, they gave it to me. I mean, I was asking the questions. I do like to ask questions. Oh, what time is it? This has been so much fun. So nice to hang out with you on this Easter weekend and explore these things. I want to get back into the healing, because I know that you're passionate about healing and you've got your DEEMS device. So as you said to me that you attempted to have the healing center, to open the physical healing center, you've got to pay rent, you've got to employ staff, it's a costly experience here on earth. And I think it might be maybe premature that people don't understand this sort of healing. Like, what happened when you opened your healing center, and why did you shut it? Did people not understand that type of healing? What was going on?
It worked beautifully.
Oh, it did?
There were miracles happening.
It
was really, it was so encouraging to me. I literally saw psychic surgery happen to this woman, brain surgery. They were putting these light rods in her brain, and they were telling me to get out of the way. And like, all right, and a lot of emotional healing, spiritual healing, physical healing. There's so many, but I was still in the phase of bringing people in to just test everything out, see how things were working, and so I was still in that process, when finances just became overwhelming. So I had to just kind of shut it down for now, and we'll see what, guidance says. Just let it all go, and there's more to come. So we'll see what that is.
Yeah. Susan says she has no idea that a soul could be damaged or hurt.
Yeah. Only through a tremendously powerful energetic explosion. That's the only way. So, but what it does is it disassembles the frequency. So imagine like little strings all attached together, okay? A bunch of little strings, and that's your vibration and your frequency. And if you have a powerful enough larger frequency, you could disassemble those strings, and that can't be allowed if possible.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm asking them questions, and I'm asking what is a soul, and they're saying they're relating back to our conversation about memory. Remember, my girlfriend went away, and I said, "What happened?" She said, "It was like just weeks ago," and she said, "It feels like a dream now." They said a soul is a combination of memory of experience. Really, like think about what is a soul. It's like an extension of source energy that has experiences either in different dimensions, and the oversoul, like there's so much of that oversoul is that combination of that memory of experience and the lessons learned from that experience.
Yeah,
it's interesting to ask, what is a soul? What do you think a soul is? I'm going to pose that question to you. What do you think a soul is?
Well, there's a difference between obviously a consciousness and a soul.
Okay, what's that?
Is awareness of the self.
Okay.
And that comes with experience. We don't begin a consciousness knowing that we're a thing, right? It requires a number of experiences, lifetimes before we realize that. Like, a plant doesn't necessarily realize it's a plant, until it has enough lifetimes as a plant and understands that, oh, wait, there are other plants around me, so I must be an individual. And then that's a consciousness. That's where self-awareness comes from. Now, that is a frequency and vibration that is locked into DNA that you carry as a soul. So our DNA isn't just this physical form. It is the map and the instructions to tell this physical form how to behave.
Exactly.
But it isn't the physical form. So DNA is actually your soul itself. Okay. Consciousness is attached to the DNA. Now, the soul is also the ego, the emotion, the experiencer.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. Now, a soul complex would be these things put together, and so we're not just a simple consciousness, and we're not just a simple awareness of the self either. We're all tied together.
Yeah. So because we're so multidimensional, and our oversoul, or whatever we want to call it, is leading multiple lives simultaneously, just say, hypothetically, if you were exploded in some nuclear force that broke apart that frequency or that DNA that was that aspect of the soul, it wouldn't damage the whole oversoul, though, would it?
Not necessarily, no.
No.
No, I mean, like I said, the only kind of damage is with tremendously powerful energetic weapons or energetic explosions, and those are subnuclear explosions.
Yeah.
At that level, things just dissipate into nothing, and energy does as well.
Yeah. Oh, darling one, we're running out of time. There's so much to explore with all of this. It gets my curious mind ticking even further. Okay. So we've got about 7 minutes to go. What do you want to share with people before we finish this show?
Oh gosh, just that I'm really grateful that I have the opportunity to speak and to assist others in information, and do the best you can every day to raise your frequency and vibration and just be the best soul you can.
Are you doing? I know you've got your device that you sell for healing, but are you doing any healing yourself with people? Like, do you do any private sessions with people? You do?
I do. Yeah, I've been highly encouraged to start doing it via Zoom.
Yeah, you can do it via Zoom. I do
yeah.
it. Really interesting. DNA, yeah, is the soul. Absolutely. You know, I've had Jules Arnez on the show, and I was on her show the other day. It hasn't come out yet because it was recorded. She had a little live audience and I was asking questions. But yeah, Jules and I discussed she says that the DNA is the most highly advanced technology in the world, like on the planet, the DNA technology. And so when you tune into the energy of the DNA, you evolve your consciousness. So she speaks exactly the same way. The DNA is the most highly evolved technology, and therefore the DNA is the soul. Yeah, I love that. But you've been a little unwell. 5 minutes to go. You've been a little unwell over the last weekend. How does your DEEMS advice help? Because I know you haven't broken anything, and maybe you're not in physical pain, but you've got some infection and a bit of a flu, whatever. How does the DEEMS device help that? Does it help that? I mean, have you used it on yourself?
Of course, yes. I sleep with it every night, so there's that. But the body is meant to heal itself, and it needs basically earth energy to do that. And so we ground and go barefoot a lot, or we find another way to do that. And so what the DEEMS does is it amplifies that earth energy that our body uses to help heal itself. So yes, there's really, it's like the most holistic possible way to heal the body, is through earth energy.
So when you get sick, as you have been lately, you don't worry about it. You just sleep with the DEEMS device, and you know that everything will be sweet.
Yeah. Because our body goes through experiences for a reason. And it's our responsibility to understand, okay, why do I have a blood infection right now? What is the point of that? And I learned some things through it. I'm like, oh, okay. I wasn't taking care of myself.
Right. Yeah.
I was neglecting my physical body. And so it manifested itself to say, you need to pay more attention.
Exactly. That is always the message with any that's always the message with any imbalance. But yeah, I was giving Chris my 2 cents worth before we went live. I said, can I have your permission to tune in? So I was looking inside his body and seeing what was going on, and then giving him the physical symptoms and then the emotional, mental symptoms. What's been going on with you mentally lately? Stress will do it to you. But so not just looking after our physical body, but looking after our emotional, mental bodies too. Like getting caught up in thought forms that are not going to be the advancement of health. They're they're going to shut down the immune system.
Right.
So, and then reminding yourself, oh damn, I've been stressing. Stop that.
Yeah.
Tell a new story.
The reason for pain is to say you injured yourself. Go take care of it.
Go take care of it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, dang. It's been beautiful to chat with you again. I so enjoyed this. I feel like we could do another show. I was talking, Tamara Richardson reached out when I posted this on Facebook, and she said she had you on, I don't know, she did 5 different shows with you. So there's a lot for you to share with us. But healing is one of my favorite subjects. Came in as a healer. I've healed myself of many things. I've seen cuts heal instantly, just not on me. I actually asked my guides to show me something physical, and my daughter was the surrogate of that. She came in with a gashed foot open, and I just put my hand over it and commanded a healing, and it just healed instantly. And I've done that at parties when I was young. I used to stitch people up psychically when they'd cut themselves, and it would just heals. Like I've healed cancer. I've healed all sorts of things in my body. There are some things that are stubborn and don't go away. And I ask my guides why, and they say you have to take responsibility, your mental state of mind. Yeah, your mental state of mind and what you're thinking and believing to be true. And I'm like, damn. But yeah, healing is possible, including cancer.
Right back at you, didn't they?
Right back at you. They do that. But yeah, the cancer epidemic that we've had in our world, hopefully it's coming out that that can change. That can change.
Yeah. It will.
Cancer is easy to heal. Easy to heal. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a blessing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you for asking. And I enjoyed our time together again.
And thanks everyone that's been tuning in. And Remember, we've been on the, I think, I'll just do another station ID, the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM, all over the place. Remember to subscribe if you're listening on Rumble or Odyssey or any of the audio platforms, or YouTube. Subscribe. You've been listening to Karen Swain, Accentuating the Positive with the fabulous Chris O'Connor, and we will catch you again next time. Happy Easter to everybody. Easter Sunday in the US.
Yeah.
Easter
Goodbye.
Monday. Maybe you didn't eat too much chocolate. Or maybe you did.
Just a little.
Big love.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.